So I decided I needed an assessment of where I was located and what I was at, and that it needed to be bound in some way to something really intimate, but then be able to be thought about in bigger ways. So there are two bodies of work. One is there, and interestingly, they divide into locale. The sculptures that are in there, which are either wood or bronze cast with some with fabric elements, they're made in Houston. Except for some of the all the fabric elements are made in Houston too, although they combine. If there's a fabric element, it has one element bought in a resale shop in Houston and one bought on my travels that have to, sometimes in San Francisco or sometimes where I happen to be going for an art exhibition or something. So I buy something in resale shop and make sure that there's one of each of them. That actually predates this, but that is what those sewn things are. But they're carved. In the morning, I live with an African gray parrot. Her name is Hannah, and in the morning I get up and she gets out of the cage. I make my coffee. We go into her room where she spends the day. She has her little studio, and we've learned. And African grays are really very, very bright. The African gray by the name of Alex was the one who showed that non-human or a great ape species could do abstract thoughts. He could do math and recognize colors, and he had a vocabulary of about 250 words.
I think Coco still lives somewhere outside of San Francisco, right?
Yeah, I think so. But so Alex was a really bright parrot. So she's an African gray, a Congolese, which is the kind he was, and so we developed this thing just because she liked to chew on some toys that were wooden, and I started to buy her other things to chew on, and she started to let me know which ones she liked to chew on, and then I started to find the shapes interesting, so I started to let her know what shapes I liked, and praise her for them, and she is chewing primarily to please me, and so we started to have this across-species communication about what that was in essence is aesthetic. So she's my collaborator on those, and she chews, and then I assemble them in some way. Though she's looked at the sculptures when they've been assembled, and she indicates if she, this is a little less clear, but she indicates if she's happy about it or not. I don't know if that means she likes it or not, but that's a little less clear. But I do know that she knows that we have this way, and it's evolved over 2.5 years. So this is the first group of those sculptures that I've collaborating with my parrot, and basically almost every morning I'm in Houston. I'll have my coffee, and she'll carve either wood or cardboard. And the one piece has a cardboard piece in it, but she carves them both differently, by the way, because they have different functions for her. Sure. So I had to learn a lot about her and about her species and about why they carve and what they do, to learn her preferences personally. And I had to learn, how to set these things up, which is an evolving situation. Sure. She had to learn how to please me and what I wanted out of this deal. And we worked out this arrangement. So those are the sculptures.
So she's your fabricator.
She is my fabricator. She and then the bronze ones get fabricated downstairs in the foundry. So that's upstairs where I live. She works, and so that became this thing that was very intimate, but had these larger, it's like thinking about the world and all the implications of your world while you're sitting in the morning and having coffee. It's like from the smallest, it's like having a responsibility for ideas in the world in the most intimate way. So similarly, the other pieces in there are from San Francisco. Because my neighborhood there is the collision of Chinatown, Little Italy, North Beach, and the whole beat culture, sort of the Barbary Coast with the strip clubs down there, the financial district, and then the sort of technology component that's grown into the warehouses down there. It's like everything is like I'm right at the center of it. Absolutely. And, on a hill, so I'm overlooking all of it, And I decided that I would... I needed to figure out where the hell I was, and of course there were social consequences to it because of, each of those environments leaves their own debris, and it's a very though my neighborhood is quite quiet, it's like right in the midst of all of this out my windows, and so what I decided is that I'd go on walks, and I would pick up items that interested me on those walks and I would lock it into a 6-block radius. Okay, anything in fact, and really it's almost only 4 blocks, but some of them came slightly outside of those 4 blocks. So 6 blocks radius, and I would walk and pick up things that interested me, and I would mend them. Because a lot of this, even with her, she's tearing things apart, and then I'm putting them back together into a whole. I'm buying 2 things from thrift stores in different places. I'm sewing them into a whole. I'm getting this stuff from the street in San Francisco, and I'm putting it back together into something that formally works as a whole. So there's 3 sets of things there. There's one that are diverse objects put into these very tight compositions and presented as collages. Right. There's a second that are kind of have 2 facets to them in that same room, the small room, and I think of that room as an index for the show, which is one is little objects that are assembled and glued together that form little sculptures, and the other one are the same square of paper that I'm using, but they're sculptures with that and an element from I found, and in all cases with them. Well, in the sewn things, all cases I leave the thread and needle. And then in the other room, there's a long trail of them, which is like a walk because you kind of go from one to the next, and they're only broken shades of clear broken glass from bottles or windows or whatever that are kind of the debris and I take one piece and I sew it on and I make a composition and leave the needle. Right. So this is the way there to kind of give you that they're both trying to figure out and be conscious of the littlest things and then all the ripples that come out of them. Sure. Like all the things that you have to think about to understand them.
And I think it's a really interesting place to be doing that because one of the topics of conversation over the past few years has been the tech growth's effect on homogenizing those neighborhoods you just listed, and how there's the risk that if you were to conduct that same experiment 10 years from now, that each of those pieces would look exactly alike because
there is that would particularly happen in some neighborhoods. There's something really curious about the neighborhood, and this is accidental in some ways, I suppose, or intuitive when I got this new place. But my neighborhood is in resistance to being overwhelmed. So Chinatown isn't going anywhere, do you know what I mean? And neither are the Italians, okay? And no matter...
So I hope Cafe Trieste is still
there.
Yeah,
it's still there, right? It's just, I live if you know where Trieste is, if you go up that hill 2 blocks, I live at the top. I live on Vallejo, which is, that's on the corner of Vallejo and Grant. I live on Vallejo 2 blocks up. So yes, there's so much resistance in that neighborhood compared to, I had an earlier place in Coal Valley, and in that neighborhood there was more change. Nothing like the Mission District. But you're right, what it does is it both addresses change, it addresses there's a lot of homeless, it addresses the dynamics of different communities in dealing with homeless, either specific to them or imported homeless. It deals with the rising property rates, and it deals with it in a really dense, tight-fitting neighborhood. So that's an interesting thing. I'm very interested in that as a kind of socio-economic sort of cultural moment. But I'm interested in doing it in a way that doesn't one time I thought, well, maybe I should be keeping a map of where I find each of these items, and that should be presented with like a map of where I find each of these items. And I thought, that's going to tell you too much, okay? Right. That could be a really good piece for somebody. Yeah. It's just not my piece.
Right, I remember seeing an artist one time who would go on similar types of walks and find some sort of found 3-dimensional object, turn it into a pinhole camera, and take a photo with it at the spot where it was found.
It's a great
And
idea.
then you could, display it on a wall, the found piece next to its pinhole.
And that's a great idea.
It's a great idea for somebody else.
Yes.
Right? And, but that, that's very interesting. And so I know you're not just a sculptor. You draw a lot. So are the drawings inspired by the 3D work, or is it hand in hand? I'm drawing a concept that goes along with it, or when do you draw? What do you draw?
Well, I draw from the same set of ideas. In a strange way, for me, every object kind of format, an object carries a kind of history and and I don't mean just a personal history. I mean, it carries the implications of its history. And so it's a device, okay? So it's a charged thing that you're doing. So when I draw, I may be addressing a related idea that can only be manifested as a kind of document, which a drawing is, or maybe it's going to engage in the paper, but in a certain way, and in the history of what that means, either as a document or a thing, and then it's a corollary idea. Sometimes it may appear similar. Sometimes it could appear quite different, actually. But the label show I did here, the Nothing show, which is now maybe 3 shows ago, which was called Nothing, and had all the Nothing labels in it. I was interested in how how like early Mondrian drawings and that kind of pier and beam, the ocean pier grid, how and the breaking it up into all the little squares kind of operated in a way that wasn't unrelated to some of the aspects of putting together those pieces, and what that meant, that they were both using modern, his belief in modernist tropes at the very beginning of modernism, at least at the non-objective, and my reusing non-objective with a material source in the labels and so forth. So I was interested in all of that and how that could work. But I thought, I can only do this if I actually take those ocean pier drawings and I push them back towards narrative. I push them away from the more abstract ones and back to either the flower or the architectural associations or the landscape associations, but not do it in an obvious way, and keep them and let them kind of refer to the labels, but refer to the
Sure.
So that worked as a kind of document. So I do that, but I've recently all what might seem like a strange thing out of my practice, although if you go back to the lampshades and other things, it's not that odd. But recently, as part of this analog GPS thing, I decided that whenever I bought flower, this was also just a San Francisco thing as I got this new place, I thought, okay, I bought flowers, first day I get them, I'm going to draw a picture of the flowers. And I have no idea if this is going to be art or not. Right. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm doing. But what it is that this habit is going to be a habit of being here and being conscious of the gestures you're making to try and find a way to be present. And part of this gesture is that you've just formalized now as a performance, in a strange way, as a document of a performance, is that you get there, the first thing you do is we buy flowers, you go home, and on the first day you draw a picture of the flowers. I might work on it a little bit the next couple days to make it look nice, but the first day, so it's all, there's first flowers. Same gesture. I could have chosen and said, well, what I should do is show, one of these bodies of work with the first flowers. But I thought that maybe if I had one disappointment in the Whitney biennial that I was in, it was that they chose all bronzes, like I would have wanted, because I had label pieces at the same time. Well, why isn't there like a label piece with this? Because I want you to go in and go, and have to dig below them, because as soon as you saw them as all bronzes, you could read them in a certain way, and it made the work too easy for you.
Sure. Part of that description you're talking about, where it's this chronicling of the event with those first flowers pictures, And I guess maybe it's because the whole association with San Francisco. It reminds me of a documentary I'd seen about Richard Serra doing an installation